So how do you find LinkedIn particularly helpful for anyone within the legal industry?
Well, Tom, I think in terms of LinkedIn, as lawyers, we spend our lives presenting our clients' cases to best effect. But as professionals, we suffer from being shy, career shy, and not engaging in terms of PR. So LinkedIn is that free platform to really get our brand out there. And it's not to be underestimated. So when I say get your brand out, I'll elaborate with more detail. But it's about finding the correct audiences that match your practice areas and not relying upon either your firm or your chambers to seek out those customers and to project that image of your practice. It's actually taking ownership for that and acting upon it. And that's how I see LinkedIn being a fundamental platform to achieve just that.
I started with LinkedIn about 15 years ago and gave it up almost immediately. And partly because of lockdown, I revived it. And what it's enabled me to do is to build up a substantial number of contacts, perhaps 750 now, that are not general legal contacts, not general client contacts, not general financial institution contacts, but absolutely directly the people doing the job that interests me for my practice. So, for instance, I do quite a bit to do with international regulatory compliance, international corruption matters, sanctions, money laundering, things like that. And so I have numerous connections now with the compliance officers in banks around the world.
What do you think some of the most important elements to have in your LinkedIn profile?
Well, I feel quite often something that's neglected with LinkedIn profiles are the headline to start with. So for instance, with mine, of course, I have Rachel Muldoon, barrister, but there are some additional details that I include there in my actual headline. For instance, I list my practice areas, so it might be tax law, corporate crime, art and cultural property. And in doing that, I'm helping those potential contacts see at a glance who I am without necessarily having to click into my profile. The added benefit of that also is it's word searchable. So suddenly I'm getting more coverage.
People are not going to follow it through and they're not going to have the time to work out who you are.
Right.
Just put that initial line to hit them with who you are and why they should read more about you or they should connect with you. You've got to think, if I was looking at this page, what would strike me as being important, relevant, and would attract me to read more about this lawyer?
Any advice or guidelines in terms of choosing your network? How do you go about building that network that's most beneficial for you?
Wow, well, there's a whole host of ways. I think for a beginner starting out, like I said, you've got to isolate what is the brand I want to project. In my case, it's a barrister who practices various areas, but predominantly corporate crime, tax, and art and cultural property. And so I take those practice areas, as any lawyer would do, and then I go on to find relevant posts. I will Google hashtags.
Through LinkedIn, I've been able to connect with possibly 100 to 200 individuals who are working in areas I'm interested in, who thought that I'm interesting enough to connect with me. And I can put out a one-line headline about a current event that's happening in Hong Kong or China, and that is viewed by 200 people who count. And I sometimes see that I've had 300 views in a month, and that's about 290 more views than I would get if I wasn't on LinkedIn. And I think it's a mistake when people just build up an enormous LinkedIn platform for no purpose at all, and they're not going to read what comes on it, and no one's going to read what they put on it. But absolutely, everyone I put on, there's a reason, and they connect with me for a reason. So that's the way I'm using it. And it's enabled me to reach a group of people I never thought that I would be able to reach.
And so, always a good question. Any mistakes or pitfalls that you can share with us?
Ooh, well, I'll start off with a controversial one.
Yeah.
I don't know about your views, Tom, but I've seen personally in the past year, I've seen numerous posts from people of a highly personal nature. So, for instance, someone, and commendable in many ways, but very controversial, announcing that they've been sober for 2 weeks, or making a complaint about a client, or potentially libelous statements, and straying into offensive remarks. I personally don't feel LinkedIn is the platform for that. Certainly they should air legally their views as and when they want, on Facebook, for instance, but LinkedIn is a professional platform. You've got too much to lose. And particularly if you're speaking on behalf of an organization, you're not simply a sole trader, that's going to rub off on your organization. So it goes without saying that keep it professional, I believe, on LinkedIn.
And I've got a number of colleagues who put on that they've just got, homeschooling parent of the month award and things like this. A lot of people who put on environmental causes, and they treat it as their Facebook page. That's fine for them. But in my view, if you're looking for a professional connection, that sort of thing's going to get people to switch off straight away. They haven't got time, whether on the firm's website or on the firm's LinkedIn or on individual lawyers' LinkedIn. I would put some short but very specific material about the issues that are coming up. I know that in my chambers there are a number of insurance specialists who've been looking at the business interruption provisions and the effect of COVID on business interruption insurance. And I know that they put out at least once a week a comment, an article, something on their LinkedIn about business interruption insurance.
And I think there's no harm in terms of posts to say right at the end, if this is an area that interests you or your clients, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Here are our contact details. Why not utilize this platform to best effect? The other downside, I think, is also perhaps for those of us who are lazy from time to time and just neglect to make any posts. I've been guilty of it. If a case comes in and I'm bogged down for a month or two, and then I suddenly realise, gosh, when was my last post? It was 2-3 months ago. But it's making that best use of your time to really build your brand.